WKYT, this is Campaign 2014 coverage of the Lexington Mayoral Debate.
Good evening. I'm WKYT's Bill Bryant, and welcome to our listeners on News Radio 630 WLAP and viewers watching on Kentucky.com and WKYT.com as well. On November 4th, Lexington voters will decide who controls the reins of Lexington's city government for the next 4 years. As head of the merged Lexington-Fayette Urban County government, the winner will lead Kentucky's second largest city over the next 4 years, and the road ahead for the winner includes big decisions: how to combat crime in the community, the future of Rupp Arena, traffic, jobs, affordable housing, and what the future of the city should look like as it continues to grow. We want to welcome the candidates. On the left of your screen is Jim Gray, the current mayor of Lexington. He's also a former vice mayor and CEO of his family's construction company. On the right, Anthony Beatty is an administrator, vice president at the University of Kentucky, and a former Lexington police chief. The Lexington Herald Leader and the League of Women Voters joined WKYT in planning this evening's debate, and we're delighted to be joined in the questioning of the candidates this evening by City Hall reporter Beth Musgrave of the Herald Leader and by Lynn Flynn of the League of Women Voters. We'll get to those questions in just a moment, and we also invite you to share your thoughts about the candidates, the issues, and the debate as it goes on this evening. Tweet them with the hashtag Lexington Debate. And before tonight's debate started, just a few minutes ago, the candidates drew numbers to decide the order of introducing themselves. And so we are going to go to that now, and we will begin our first response tonight, our first opening statement, 2 minutes from Anthony Beatty.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you to the League of Women Voters and certainly WKYT TV and the Lexington Herald Leader for sponsoring this special event to give the citizens of Lexington a chance to discuss the future of our city. Throughout my campaign, I've shared with clarity and specifics proactive public safety, enhanced public service, and superior fiscal stewardship. These issues resonate with citizens all across Lexington, and I stand strong on these issues. But let's talk about leadership today. I have proven public safety leadership, an extraordinary track record with 35 years in city government and 7 years at the University of Kentucky. I've led the city of Lexington in becoming one of the safest cities in the United States. My proven leadership reflects strong people skills, articulating issues that anyone can grasp, collaboration, transparency, inclusiveness, problem solving, and decision making, and a responsible and resourceful approach to spending public taxpayers' dollars. In contrast, for nearly 4 years, my opponent has demonstrated poor government leadership. His leadership has been spin-selling Lexington. As a result, our city is in a centrifuge. Gray has been spin-selling the people of Lexington on public safety and the Rupp Arena project. Big mistakes and bad decisions in government leadership. Escalating crime, public safety crisis, state legislature embarrassment, tarnished UK relationships, millions of dollars spent in project consultant fees, and a lack of genuine concern for the sustainable and vibrant blend of our urban, suburban, and rural neighborhoods. But Lexington, we did not let Jim Gray spin-sell us on spending $350 million on Rupp Arena, and we cannot allow him to spin-sell Lexington on the next 4 years. Too many mistakes and bad decisions. It's time for proven and new leadership. I ask for your vote on November the 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Beatty. And now a 2-minute opening statement from candidate Jim Gray.
Thanks, Bill, and let me thank all of you for joining us tonight. Let me start with 3 words: getting things done. These 3 words have carried me through the first 4 years, and they'll carry me through the next 4 years. Getting things done. That's exactly what I've done as your mayor. Getting things done means identifying our core values: public safety and quality of life, foundation blocks. From there, we focused on 3 key goals: creating jobs, running government efficiently, and building a great American city. First, creating jobs. Today, 150,000 people work in our city, 9,000 more than 3 years ago. But there's still more to do. That's why we've invested $1 million of our surplus into a jobs fund that will grow jobs. Second, running government efficiently. Right out of the gate, we moved the mayor's office from the top floor of City Hall to the first floor, right out in the open. We faced a budget deficit of over $30 million. A $20 million hole in our health insurance program, and a $300 million underfunded fire and police pension. We made tough but fair decisions. Our reforms have already saved taxpayers over $60 million in 3 years, and those savings compound year over year. Those savings have allowed us to invest in the third goal, building a great American city. Investments in our core values, public safety and quality of life. Investments of over $500 million in public safety, more than any 3-year period in our history. $5 million for new police and fire vehicles, ambulances and crews. 165 new police officers, 111 new firefighters. We're building a new senior citizens center. I often say that the best indicator of future performance is past performance. So I am looking forward to hearing from you tonight and continuing to work together to make Lexington even better by getting things done.
Thank you, Candidate Gray, and thanks for the opening statements from our candidates. And now we'll begin our question and answer period, and we will begin that with Beth Musgrave of the Lexington Herald Leader, who will have a question that will be first answered by Jim Gray.
Name one thing the city should do to improve public safety.
I'm sorry.
Name one thing the city should do to improve public safety.
Well, I think when we think about public safety, we have to really look in the context of the investments that we've made, Beth. We've made more than $500 million in investments in public safety, $25 million in the last 3 years more. We have also made investments in equipment, $5 million in new police vehicles and fire vehicles. Strategic overtime by the police, allowing our police to put boots on the ground, $550,000. What I think is really important to remember as well is that we are cleaning up neighborhoods. So when we look ahead, you really can't say one thing. It's so important that we look comprehensively at all the issues that we have in public safety and not just draw down into one area.
And now, Candidate Beatty, respond to that question.
For me, it's a matter of simply refocusing the priorities and the energy into what's important for our government. Our government's #1 job is to make our citizens safe. So how do we focus our energy there? How do we focus our time there, and certainly our resources? We're playing catch up, trying to get back to where we were a few years ago in terms of our ability to make our community safe. So all the divisions in public safety need to be fully supported, fully staffed, and certainly fully facilitated in order to be effective. We've got to turn the crime trends that we're seeing. These current crime trends must be turned around, and it's going to take a full commitment to public safety to do that. So funding, facilitating, staffing, and supporting public safety at the highest level for all of government to be focused on how we make Lexington safe.
Our next question to be answered, to be asked by Lynn Flynn of the League of Women Voters, who is with us tonight, and that will be answered first by Candidate Beatty. Lynn?
Thank you, Bill. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund is now a reality. What's your understanding of the need for and your commitment to an identified funding stream for that?
I'll answer the last part first, Lynn. I fully support the concept and the idea of making funding and consideration available for affordable housing for all of our citizens in Lexington. Certainly everyone deserves the opportunity to have food and shelter and clothing. So I fully support the idea of the funding for the initiative. I also understand and know that we've only provided seed money for the sustainability of the program. So we got to also ensure that in the budget there's long-term funding for the project to ensure that we have housing, and how do we expand it, take it to the next levels in terms of how we can provide housing for those who are in need. So sustain the fund and figure out how we can continue to provide the housing levels needed for all of our citizens.
Candidate Gray, your response?
I'm very proud that we were able to fund the affordable housing, the initial funds, and homelessness as well. The only way we were able to get there was because we made big changes, transformative changes in our budgeting process and in our spending. We were able to put our city back on a financial path toward financial stability. We were able to live within our means. So only when we were able to achieve savings and efficiencies were we able to make these investments, needed investments in affordable housing, in addressing our homelessness. And what I've learned in a career in business is that it's so important that you look at continuous improvement. How are we going to do better tomorrow what we did yesterday?
All right, and now I'll have a question for the candidates, and Candidate Gray will answer this first. If the General Assembly were to pass this so-called lift tax option, where localities could pass a local tax for a limited time for a specific project, would you see proposing one for a Lexington project, and if you would, what would it likely be?
Well, I think that's for the people to decide, Bill, but leadership, what leadership can do is support through the local option sales tax. Leadership is required to actually determine what projects might be proposed as a result of the people's input. And what's important about the local option sales tax is that the people get a choice. Unlike any other tax that today is offered, people actually get a choice. So, for example, say that hypothetically suggests that the folks want a new fire station. People want a new fire station. Leadership proposes it. Or a new park system. Leadership proposes it, and then the people vote on it. So this gives us a chance, the people, a chance to actually vote on those projects.
Candidate Beatty.
I feel strongly that localities should have the option to have the local option for their sales tax, and certainly those dollars should be dedicated to the projects that the citizens feel are appropriate. So the referendum should be for the citizens to be able to decide what projects we would go after, or what projects should be completed for our community. The other thing I think is important when we take on projects of that nature, if we have the local option, is that we ensure that there's some limit on when the tax dollars are expended for the project, when that ends. So some types of sunset clause, something to say that there's an end point to the project so that the citizens know that and their money is well spent and it's accountable.
We have another question now from Beth Musgrave of the Lexington Herald-Leader. She covers City Hall, and she has a question that will first be answered by Candidate Beatty.
Would you support using public money, either general fund or bond money, to improve internet speed in Lexington?
I've been talking about internet speed, particularly high-speed broadband, for several months now, and I certainly think all options are on the table when we discuss this. I do feel strongly that Lexington should be on the front leading edge of providing this type of services for our citizens. It opens so many doors and opportunities for access, for whether it's job opportunities or research and all the things we try to do here. So I do support the opportunity to fund it. How we fund it is what we would have to discuss when we get to the table, when we see what the plans are and how we can do it. But we've been talking about having high-speed broadband access for Lexington for several months now, and it's critical that we do it. Many other cities are leading the way across our country, like Chattanooga and other places. So I do support it.
Candidate Gray, high-speed internet.
Well, in June of last year, in fact, I commissioned a team of private and public sector people to actually examine this opportunity. And that team recommended that we engage every competitive effort that we could, bring competition into this project. And that's when that commission actually recommended then that instead of the public just through the public sector or government just making a full investment, and that's what Chattanooga did. But what we are examining are ways where we can take advantage of the new technology and also funding, private capital that is today moving in this direction, so we are able to give the citizens the lowest cost and the fastest speed. That's what we're looking for, citizens and business, and through this a competitive advantage for our city. Just like the interstate highway system was in the 50s and 60s, this internet today is giving us competitive advantage.
If you're just joining us, you are watching and listening to the debate of the candidates for mayor of Lexington, Kentucky. These gentlemen seek to serve for the next 4 years as head of the urban county government in Lexington. And our next question is from Lynn Flynn of the League of Women Voters, and Candidate Gray will answer first. Lynn?
What are your current plans for downtown convention center and town branch development?
The convention center, I think looking at the convention center, looking at town branch are really opportunities for us to imagine our city in a fully new way, in a sense. And what I mean by that is that our convention center today is 40 years old. Now, I've been in the construction business all my life and did 830 projects before I left our company for this job. And what I've learned is that a project that's, or a building that's long in the tooth needs often to be re-examined. What is its competitive advantage today? How is it doing competitively? The opportunities as well for our town branch simply have to do with what is authentic and unique and special about our city. Our city was settled around the town branch in 1775, our original water source. And the plan for the town branch that's been presented through an international competition is for the linear park to pass along the path of the town branch and episodes then along that path. Now, will this happen overnight? Of course not. But over time, it can be generationally transformative.
Candidate Beatty, your response, downtown convention center and the town branch.
Right. As I understand, the whole idea of the convention center, Rupp Arena, town branch project were all rolled into one. So they certainly bear, or there's merit in certainly looking at the project in terms of how it benefits the area there. So I think it's time that we go back to the table and look at the project in totality to determine where are the best next steps to make that whole development down there happen. And there are several options on the table in the discussion, but certainly town branch and the area there needs to be included in that discussion be revisited, so we make sure that when we do this, we've got everyone at the table, there's full collaboration, everyone's on board, and we can sell the project then to the citizens of not only Lexington but the state of Kentucky.
I'll ask the next question, and this is for both candidates, and Candidate Gray will answer first this time. Many say that the government that is closest to the people governs best. Louisville leaders are studying enacting a local minimum wage that would be effective only in Metro Louisville. Could you see proposing a minimum wage for Lexington that is higher than the current federal minimum wage?
I think we need to consider...
I'm sorry, Candidate Beatty first on that. Yes.
Okay. You said great first.
Yeah. Bill, I do support the idea of an increased minimum wage to give a standard of living to every citizen that's an opportunity to have a fair and equitable standard of life. But at the same time, I realize that it can have a negative impact on the community that you're trying to impact that on. So I would like to think that we would get to the point that our country is moving toward a higher standard of living in terms of increasing the cost of living and giving a higher minimum wage. And also then the regions and the other areas that are competing against other would be on fair and equal footing. As you said, Louisville has already done this, so we need to look at the areas that's around Lexington. I'd like to think that we'd all be moving in the same direction at the same time. But I do support the idea of increasing the minimum wage for all employees.
And now, Candidate Gray.
I've worked with Mayor Greg Fisher on the BEAM project, which describes the Bluegrass Economic Advancement Movement, and that project has been designed, that project was designed to elevate our economy and focus especially on the value-added elements of our economy, advanced manufacturing, our agricultural economy, all of the elements of our economy. Now, I believe in paying a living wage in our family's business. Today, there's no one who is earning a minimum wage because simply it's not competitive. So, and the same is true of our government today. So I believe strongly and vigorously that we should examine this issue the same way that our competitor cities are across the country and our states are across the country.
Next question comes from Beth Musgrave of the Lexington Herald Leader, and she'll be asking a question now that will first be answered by Candidate Gray. Beth?
One of the biggest complaints that the city receives has to deal with its cable franchise agreement. What, if anything, can the city do to improve Time Warner customer service?
You're right, Beth. Lots of complaints, and with all utilities, I've learned that one of the things that the mayor, I've learned that if you have a deep need to be loved, don't run for mayor. And the complaints and the objections that we get routinely are often, I believe, well-founded. It's our responsibility, even though we don't have the responsibility that the Public Service Commission the oversight responsibilities, it's our responsibility to speak out on these issues. And it's our responsibility to participate in negotiations, and that's what we're doing today. the city is participating in a vigorous way at the table in the negotiations with Time Warner. It will also help us, my belief is that it will help us, these negotiations in a vigorous spirit will help us with our Gigabit City initiative. The more vigorous our negotiations are, the more likely the chance that a Time Warner, for example, will present competitive opportunities for us in terms of the high-speed internet project and initiative.
Candidate Beatty, how will you answer that question?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important that the complaints from the citizens get relayed certainly to Time Warner or any other provider for services of that nature. And there are a couple of things that I think we could do to improve that. Obviously, we're negotiating now soon for the contract. But at the same time, it seems to me that this would be an opportunity or an occasion where that we should have someone who acts as a liaison, who's a part of government, who's a direct liaison on a daily basis in terms of the operational processes that impact our citizens and have some impact. So how do we work with the vendor, being Time Warner or whoever, to make sure that we can increase and build relationship? How do we work with them so at times for the contract negotiations we already have some type of working relationship? And certainly as this relates to the PSC when they start talking about rate increases, how are we working with the government? Who works for the citizens? Who's the citizen's voice in this? I think we have to amplify that and have better communications with folks like Time Warner.
And now another question from the League of Women Voters, represented tonight by Lynn Flynn, and she will ask that question first to candidate Beatty.
Recently, we've seen water pipes burst and sewer lines collapse, highlighting our aging infrastructure. What will you do to address these infrastructure needs?
Well, certainly we're under the EPA mandate, the Environmental Protection Agency mandate, that's projected out to cost our citizens of Lexington $600 million, that mandates that we make these improvements. Long overdue, and we're certainly moving in the direction of getting those issues taken care of. What I'm concerned with is making sure that the $600 million expenditure that we've laid out for the citizens to have to bear over the next 12 or 13 years of the contract with the EPA, that we meet all the thresholds and all the marks in terms of when we complete certain portions of the project. So the move is afoot to get the issues fixed, but we've got to make sure that we are meeting the timelines and the marks and monitoring what's going to happen in terms of fixing the sewers. As you know, we currently have storm sewers connected and interacting with sanitary sewers, which causes quite a mess, overflows in our intersections in our city when we have a deluge of water. That cannot be tolerated in Lexington. So the EPA mandate causes Lexington to make sure that we fix it, and we must be on target to complete it.
Candidate Gray, your response to that question.
Well, I've been in the construction business all my life and actually been responsible for billions of dollars of construction. Now, how does that relate to this project? Well, this project was originally estimated to be a $600 million project over 10 to 12 years. So you break that down annually, and then you attack each project separately. You address each project bi-weekly, twice a month. I'm meeting with the Director of Environmental Quality and the project manager for this project. Already today, we are seeing savings because of extraordinarily good management, what's called value engineering in the construction and engineering industry. We are seeing savings on one project alone of as much as $70 million. And this was a project estimated at $112 million, and that's the town branch holding tanks, one of the larger of the $600 million, the largest of the $600 million total project. So we are staying on schedule and we're staying on budget, and I am personally involved in this project all the time.
Next question will come from me, and it will be answered first by candidate Gray. The militarization of police departments has been in the news in light of the events in Ferguson, Missouri, and in some other communities. It has started a debate across the country. Do you support Lexington seeking surplus military equipment to be used in special circumstances? Candidate Gray first.
Well, first, Bill, I would say Lexington is not Ferguson. Victor Kapler is a professor at Eastern Kentucky University in its Department of Justice and Public Safety. And Professor Kapler says that Lexington has an extraordinarily solid model for community policing. Now, that model also includes, as Mr. Beatty knows, that model includes extraordinarily effective training for our first responders, especially for our police and our front line. And so they are accustomed, fortunately, to dealing with large events, with large group populations. And this then leads us to having, when a need is identified, then we are able to actually support that with good data, why we would be asking for that equipment.
Candidate Beatty.
Yeah, Bill, let me answer. I think the first thing to denote, we're talking about two different things here. The militarization of police agencies is probably a misnomer here. The idea of buying the equipment or getting the equipment through the surplus program that the federal government offers makes the equipment available to the entities. The training, the skill set, the way the police interact with the community is something that happens internal to the agency. So the militarization of the agency is, we're talking about getting equipment versus how the police react to and interact with the citizens. And so to answer your question, yes, I support the idea of making the equipment available because it's highly tactical equipment, very expensive to purchase. Most agencies could not get it if they did not have the opportunity for the federal project. But at the same time, it's how you use the equipment, the relationship you've established with the community. But in tactical situations, any citizen would want their police agency to have that equipment available and available to respond to the crisis kinds of situations that we see all over our country today, particularly those that involve matters of homeland security and others.
Our next question will come from Beth Musgrave of the Lexington Herald Leader. She'll direct that first to candidate Beatty.
Do you support moving to two-way downtown streets?
At this time, I do not support moving to two-way downtown streets. We've had, over the last 30 years, probably 2 or 3 different studies to look at two-way versus one-way streets. Understanding the volume of traffic that we have in our downtown area now, the limited ability of some of our narrow streets to handle left turns across traffic, it causes major traffic jams and worst case scenarios, a worse situation than we have even now in some situations. So at this point, I don't see it being practical to do for Lexington. However, we know that we're in the middle of looking at that again, studying whether it's practical to do that for downtown Lexington. But from historically, we know that it's problematic for cities like ours to implement two-way traffic because it causes such traffic backups and traffic jams.
Candidate Grave, two-way streets in downtown Lexington.
Well, I've learned that in a long career in business and in government that you never say no. You examine all opportunities. What Mr. Beatty's referring to, what Anthony's referring to, is a study that's underway, an engineering and economic study. And other cities across the country that went to one-way streets in their urban areas, their urban cores, 30, 40, 50 years ago, have adjusted and have adapted. And they did that in order to increase the economic vitality, especially of their downtowns or their urban areas. Now, can you do it on every street? Of course not. But we've already seen, for example, at the new campus for BCTC, Bluegrass Community and Technical College, at 4th Street in Newtown, we've seen that area, at the 4th Street at Newtown adjusted from one-way to two-way, and most who are using that street will say, you know, gee, now we get to see this both ways, and it has not actually compromised. So where these opportunities exist, my belief is in the spirit of continuous improvement and elevating our economy where we have the opportunity to, and give businesses new opportunities, following economic models that are proven, that we should examine it. But where it will compromise traffic flow, we've got to be very, very careful and very judicious about it.
If you happen to just be joining us, we're about halfway through the Lexington Mayoral Debate here, being sponsored tonight by WKYT, the Lexington Herald Leader, News Radio 630, WVLK, and the League of Women Voters. We've all partnered to bring you this opportunity to hear from the candidates Jim Gray and Anthony Beatty, and they're answering our questions tonight after having made opening statements earlier, and then we'll have closing statements later. Our next question is from Lynn Flynn of the League of Women Voters, and it's to be directed first to candidate Gray.
What will you do to reduce the carbon footprint and increase the energy efficiency in Fayette County?
Well, as a city, Lynn, we're already, as a city government, we've taken the lead in doing energy efficiency audits. We've saved millions of dollars in the city alone. Our community corrections facility, our jail, is today considering offers from private sector companies which manage more efficiently the facility, can manage more efficiently that facility. Now that's just an example, but let's also look at what we're doing with the consent decree project. That represents a major investment in improving our environment. Now, that can translate itself over time into our improving the environment fully. Now, directly with a carbon footprint, perhaps not, but I think what it does is it illustrates our commitment, the spirit, and that is where it's so important that we focus, and then we take strategic and tactical steps to make these adjustments.
Candidate Beatty, your response?
Your question lends itself back to the question we just talked about, traffic, and traffic flow and patterns directly impact Lexington as a designation of the city with the worst carbon footprint in the country. So how do we improve traffic flow, traffic patterns? That will have a direct impact on the negative designation that we have. So we need to work on that. And in that discussion, we need to start thinking about mass transit and systems that we can move larger numbers of people, so we minimize the number of individuals or single vehicle occupied vehicles coming to our downtown area and moving around our city. So let's start thinking about the impact that the automobile and other vehicles have on our carbon footprint. The other thing that's important here is the idea of how do we look at our buildings and facilities, particularly those that the government owns and operates, to ensure that they're efficient as they can be in terms of not giving off emissions, certainly well insulated, and all those other things that we can do to make them more effective and efficient at not impacting our carbon footprint. And so I'd like to see the government working toward developing more new and more contemporary buildings, more efficient buildings, and certainly those that will lend themselves well for years to come in terms of not negatively impacting our carbon footprint.
All right, and again, we want to thank our partners tonight who are bringing this to you. Of course, WKYT, the Lexington Herald Leader, News Radio 630, WLAP, and the League of Women Voters. Now, next question is for candidate Beatty to begin with. While there are day-to-day concerns, and we've talked about many of them, like potholes and parks that the mayor has to pay attention to, we know we live in a world that is potentially and more so volatile. Mayor Teresa Isaac faced an ice storm just weeks after taking office. How are you prepared to respond if there were to be a major man-made or natural disaster in Lexington?
Well, I think you have to look back at my experience and leadership in many crisis situations. I have to refer back to my 35 years in law enforcement and as police chief here in Lexington, where we managed many major crises, everything from the ice storm to Ku Klux Klan rallies to tragic deaths involving floods and line-of-duty deaths involving police officers and firefighters, plane crashes on a major proportion. And so my experience, my knowledge, my skill set, my leadership all lend themselves very well to that situation. And I've transposed that and carried that over to the University of Kentucky in terms of making sure that their campus is safe, and we're in a reactionary mode to situations like that. So I have the skill set, I have the experience, I have the knowledge, have the ability and practical experience in dealing with crisis management on every measurable level of the scale in terms of scope.
Candidate Gray.
Often these issues are about leadership and about identifying what needs to be done and when. An example of an opportunity that we seized in this administration was to build a new emergency operations center. Now, it was originally estimated to cost $43 million and be built at Coldstream. We were able to take an existing facility and renovate and do this project for almost half that cost. Now, how does that translate? Well, it translates into, for the taxpayers, we are saving money and achieving the highest value. Now, how does that translate into a disaster itself? It says that we are thinking strategically, we are thinking about these management issues routinely. There's concern today about Ebola, about that virus, about it, approaching and being on the soils of America today. And what have I already done? Had conversations and had meetings with Dr. Rice Leach, the director of our health department, the Board of Health. So it's about getting ahead of it, being proactive as well. Having the resources, which is what an emergency operations center, a new and modern one, represents, at a responsible cost, and then understanding daily and routinely what we need to do.
Our next question will come from Beth Musgrave of the Lexington Herald-Leader, and it will be directed first to candidate Gray.
Unemployment in the city's East End hovers around 20%, one of the highest in our city. What can the city do to address unemployment in this area?
Yes, Beth, and the other number that you didn't mention, of course, is that the overall unemployment in Lexington is 5.3%. Those numbers are troubling. They're difficult. I often say that a city has blessings as well as burdens. Now, what I have done as mayor is increase, for example, in the summertime, there's an initiative called the Summer Training Program, and the city actually sponsors then kids in summer internships. And sponsors mean we pay for it. The city pays for it. We moved from 150 to 200, from 150 students to 225 this year. All right, now that we hope will give young people then the chance to have a better opportunity, first for education and then for good training. Now, is it going to solve all our problems? No. But this is an indicator of how we should be approaching unemployment, providing training, providing opportunities, and identifying these areas where the most need is occurring.
Candidate Beatty?
Beth, you're right. We do have sections or parts of our city that have 20% unemployment rate, and that's deeply troubling to think that we can have disparity throughout our city. So how do we make opportunities available for the folks who otherwise don't have the opportunities to get themselves in positions to take the jobs when the opportunity is created? And it's the government's job to make sure that we provide ready skills for folks so that they can go to work when the jobs are presented here. And so when we got parts of our community that are struggling and suffering, then it's very, 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 very critical that we have programming that allows for that assistance. And so the programming can be the types of things that give them the skill set, give them the training, and then offer the jobs to them so that they can take care of themselves and their families. And it can be temporary programs or it can be long-term and sustained programs. However, it's critical and it's very important that we have the programs for folks to get the opportunity to go to work.
We'll direct the next question first to candidate Beatty, and it comes from Lynn Flynn of the League of Women Voters. Lynn?
What will you do to protect and support agriculture and farming, including the horse farms in Fayette County?
Right. Lynn, we had many conversations throughout the community with the citizens of Lexington, and for some reason or another, outside our inner city, the folks in the horse farm industry and the other farms that are here need to be included in the discussion about how we make Lexington even better. Understanding that the agriculture and the farm industry made Lexington what it is. It's certainly a core of who we are, and we've got to build on those opportunities for them and enhance those. And so monitoring the urban service area, creating opportunities for the industry outside the urban service areas to flourish is critical, is critical for our urban county government, and that's a job for the leadership to do.
Well, it's surely the horse industry is surely our signature industry, and I've been working recently with members of the horse industry, to consider ways that tourism can be enhanced. When we look at the horse industry, when we look at our farming community, and we combine that and link that with the new interest in bourbon, the Bourbon Trail, for example, we really have a unique opportunity here in Central Kentucky, right here in Lexington, to link the bourbon industry and it's both in moderation, all things in moderation, of course, and the horse industry. What those folks are describing is they're already using the language horse country to describe these opportunities. So working together with these folks would continue to be a primary responsibility of the mayor. And as Anthony said, preserving the urban services boundary, being responsible there, and supporting the purchase of development rights program as well, responsibly.
I'll ask the next question, and it will be answered first by candidate Gray. The railroads have been so historically important in Lexington. Certainly there were major stations here, and it was a place where there were almost like a hub system that we now see with the airport system. A lot of places, people came here and changed trains and so forth. But looking forward, light rail service, the potential of the railroad being used in other ways in the economy. Talk about the railroad and its future. Does it have a future in Lexington? Well,
Bill, I often tell the story that in 1832, Henry Clay, the first mayor of Lexington and one of the first merchants, they raised $1 million to build a railroad between Lexington and Louisville and Lexington and Cincinnati. Now, $1 million in 1832 would be worth about $700 million today. So they were thinking ambitiously and aspirationally. They were thinking about connecting to river towns because Lexington was not. And that's when the river was emerging as a primary source for commerce. Now, today, the railroad continues to be primarily utilized for commerce. The question I think you have is, can it be translated the way that, can we translate opportunity into mass transit, opportunity for citizens to use the railroad? Those are the real questions. Now, these are really expensive challenges that cities across America have, but they're challenges that we need to address, and we need to address routinely.
Candidate Beatty, a future for the railroads in Lexington?
Yes, there is, and certainly I understand and know that basically we use our railroad system for commerce and movement of goods. But as we look around and we talk about the idea of Lexington 50 years from now, the vision of where Lexington might be in terms of growth out to the surrounding counties and areas that are contiguous to us, we need to think now about how we develop transit systems, back to our mass transit idea. So the rails can be used for things other than just moving merchandise. It's very, very critical that we think about how we can use the railroad to move people. And I think it's very important because it will allow us then to improve our carbon footprint, something we talked about a few minutes ago here. And so I'm thinking about the future, 40 or 50 years from now, what do we look like? How do we move people around? How do we move goods? So let's think about it and talk about it now rather than waiting till that time comes upon us and we're not ready, we're in a reactionary mode.
The next question for the candidates for mayor of Lexington, Kentucky to serve for the next 4 years is from Beth Musgrave of the Lexington Herald-Leader. Beth?
What, if anything, would you do to improve the city's relationship with the University of Kentucky?
And candidate Beatty to answer first on that one.
Well, first thing, it comes down to leadership and management style. My style is to collaborate, have diversity of thought and opinion at the table, have open discussion about whatever the problem is, and then move forward together collectively to work to deal with the issue. And so that's the style of leadership I used in the past as police chief. It's what I use at the University of Kentucky, and I think it works when you transpose it to leadership in government. And now the University of Kentucky, the urban county government, needs to sit down and have a conversation about how we move Lexington and the University of Kentucky together forward, all at the same time, on the same foot, and everybody having an open voice about where we go and the direction we go in. So again, collaboration, open discussion, sit down and talk about how we move Lexington forward. Understanding that the University of Kentucky is our biggest economic engine. A $3 billion a year enterprise certainly generates revenue for our community, and it certainly generates tax dollars, which are very, very critical for us. We need to have them at the table, and we need to discuss how we move both entities together.
Candidate Gray, the relationship, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Beth, this goes right back to your question about our economy and about jobs and about unemployment. One of the things that I've done is to use part of our surplus to create a jobs fund, and we worked with the University of Kentucky in doing that. We've worked with the University of Kentucky in identifying the opportunities for the gigabit city. So you're right that everything that we do as a city is influenced by the university. And so working together with the university is essential. Now, I often quote the former Vice Mayor Isabel Yates, who I refer to sometimes as the first lady of all things Lexington. And Isabel will say about issues that all issues that get to the city council or would get to elevate themselves to the administration at the University of Kentucky, their issues are like pancakes. No matter how thin, there are always two sides. So what we're dealing with are opportunities, and we often have differing points of view that we need to bring together. And the word collaboration is a good word and a good language to use for that. The opportunities for collaboration are enormous, and the opportunities for leveraging our university city. We're one of really 6 cities that are like our university cities, not just college towns in the country.
All right, and our next question is from Lynn Flynn of the League of Women Voters, with a question that will first be answered by candidate Gray.
Thank you, Bill. Do you support adventure tourism such as zip lines or hiking trails in rural Fayette County? And if so, how does that relate to protecting agriculture and farming?
Well, we have to respect the zoning ordinances that we have in place, and that's essential, Lynn. And today, those zoning ordinances are restrictive in terms of the zip lines. Now, there has been efforts to examine that. Some of these efforts to examine it have been contentious. And again, it's sort of like Isabel's pancake. What is important is that we also look at the changing dynamics of our expectations of young people, employees. So today, young people want to get into the countryside. There's a lot of activity, for example, at the Red River Gorge. So the more that we can open our countryside, our rural landscape, and invite the public, the better. But there are issues, and there are legitimate issues with the farmers and the horse industry. So, you know, what I find inspiring, though, is the willingness to work together to try to resolve some of these issues and really create new opportunities.
And now, candidate Beatty, your response.
Right, on the concept of the idea of adventure tourism, I'd like to throw ecotourism in there too if I can, because they're kind of hand in hand, if I may, Lynn. And think about how Lexington, again, has this unique brand of the horse industry and the green space and agriculture, and then how do we make the ecotourism and the adventure tourism work within that. But it's still very, very critical that we protect our brand and how that works, but at the same time look at and review ordinances and the issues that restrict the changes and how we can make it work for all entities involved and make it work effectively. The idea of regional ecotourism and regional adventure tourism is a great way to deal with this, because we've got in very close proximity to our city all the opportunities for those things to happen without having such a negative impact on our brand, that being the rural green space. So again, I'm for looking at the ordinances, making the adjustments if they meet the standards, and let the commissions, the planning and zoning folks make those decisions for us.
The next question, and we'll direct it first to candidate Beatty, and we've hit around on this a little bit. We touched on it when we've talked about policing and what is done in the community and the costs of that, and the necessity in having those first responders be well trained and well equipped. What can be done to reduce the violence in Lexington? We have it has been a rough summer by any estimate, and now more issues heading into the fall. What can be done to reduce the violence in Lexington? Candidate Beatty.
Yeah, it's not very simple, but it's something that we can do and do very quickly. You think about the idea of when we're talking about violence, we're talking about police response and police matters, but there are also underlying reasons for the violence. So we need to look at and address all those issues that are causing the increase in the type, the nature, the frequency, the location, the boldness, if you will, of the crimes that we're seeing. So how do we look at all the things and the reasons that are causing it, from the social standpoint, from our community and all the services that we can provide, and then how do we provide adequate police and law enforcement services and other first responders to be able to deal with this type of violence. It's troubling to me to see the types of crimes that we're having, but at the same time, I know and understand that the folks who have the skill set in law enforcement and other first responders can adequately deal with the problem if given the tools, the facilities, the staffing, the training, and all the things that they need to do their jobs. And so we've got to get back to supporting that. We've got to get back to being proactive in how we deal with issues of crime in our community. So that means not only police officers for their response to crime, but certainly their visibility, certainly their interaction with the citizens, and that kind of citizens oriented policing. We've got to get back to that as a basic. But the first thing you have to do is have a presence, and we've determined that the presence has been reduced here, and we've got to beef it back up.
Canada Gray, your response to reducing violence in Lexington.
Well, we have vigorously taken public safety as our #1 priority. Today, our authorized strength for police is 570, and we are at that number. While I've been mayor, we have recruited and trained 165 new police officers. We've made investments of more than $500 million, $25 million more in the general fund while I've been mayor. We have also cleaned up neighborhoods. Now, Bill, this is really important because you go out on Richmond Road, there was an apartment complex with almost 600 units, Pennington Place, and it was crime-ridden. It was poisoning the neighborhoods around it. Today, it has been revitalized. I personally was involved in that project, recruiting the right developer. Now, why is that important? Because we are trying to prevent. When Anthony uses the word proactive, that is proactive. And it's going beyond just policing to issues and opportunities we have in our city to make our city better and to avoid and prevent crime.
Canada Gray will answer the first respond to this question now from Beth Musgrave of the Lexington Herald Leader.
Homelessness continues to be a problem in Lexington. If elected, what one specific thing would you do to address this issue?
Did you say?
Yes.
All right. Well, without sounding presumptuous, Beth, I will say that we've already done a lot. We've done more, arguably, than has been done in a very long time by investing $750,000 in the Office of Homelessness, in creating a commission that first examined it carefully and thoughtfully and put a plan together. And then we recruited and hired a talented administrator and manager and leader to lead this office. And what is that person doing? Helping to organize a collaboration among all the entities, those in our city who are themselves working because they're caring and giving, working to address homelessness. Faith-based community, those in the government, those in the private sector. So this is not a Johnny one-note kind of answer because it's not a Johnny one-note kind of question or issue or problem. Lexington, I said earlier, has blessings and burdens. As a city, we are going to attract talented people with a lot of talent, and we're going to attract those who need jobs and are maybe slipping through the cracks. So we've got to address this, and we are addressing it. Homelessness office, affordable housing as well.
Candidate Beatty, your response.
Yeah, the first thing we have to do is ensure that we prioritize this because it is a growing problem for our community. We know that the numbers of homeless increase every year in a city like Lexington. And so we've got to recognize it for what it is. It is a problem, not only for the individuals who are living in our streets, but certainly the folks who deal with them in other situations. So we've got to admit that it's a problem, recognize that, and move forward with the initiatives that are already started in an aggressive fashion in terms of dealing with it. So understanding the causes, the natures of what causes homelessness, all the issues that the folks are dealing with, bring to bear all the forces that we need to make sure we take care of those who are in need. Make sure we bring in not only the social services, but the medical segment of our community, all the faith-based organizations, all the people that can help. And let's sit down and talk about it, understand it, and get everybody moving in the same direction in one accord. And let's be compassionate about those who are in need, the least in our community.
Well, those are our questions. Any of them surprise you?
No. Not at all. No,
You've done some of this, right?
And there's going to be more, Bill. Yes, sir.
More.
Unlike some campaigns, right, Anthony?
Yeah. Quite a few, yeah.
That's right.
You all are going around and debating and talking
Yes.
often about the
we are.
issues, and
the way-
obviously admire each other in some ways for
Right.
what things that have been done in the community over the years.
Right.
We have our closing statements now, and we will begin those with Candidate Gray. It's 2-minute closing statement.
All right. Well, if we dial back to Anthony's opening statement, Anthony you're pretty critical about what I've done as mayor, Anthony, and I'd like to address that. It's easy to criticize, just to be critical and score political points, but Anthony knows that that's not what leadership is about. Leadership is about promoting our city and not tearing it down. Now, Anthony says we need 3 things. He says we need superior fiscal stewardship. Well, we've done that. Consistently balanced budgets, 3 years of surpluses, and financially Lexington is healthier today than we have ever been. He says we need enhanced public services. We've done that. Moved the mayor's office from the 12th floor of City Hall to the 1st floor out in the open where problems can be more easily solved, saving millions and protecting our environment with the consent decree, improving roads from Clays Mill to Winchester to Leestown. He says we need proactive public safety. We've done that. Invested more in 3.5 years than ever before. Even Chief Beatty has said you can't eliminate all crime. But we are getting things done, and we've been able to do all this without raising taxes. Public safety is our top priority, and our budget proves it. We have other critical priorities as well that we can't ignore. Social services, job creation, neighborhoods, roads, streets, parks, and trails. I would ask Anthony, which of these services does he want to cut? Or which tax does he want to raise to build a police force the size of cities like Oakland or Sacramento, California, and many more? Those are cities with larger populations and up to 10 times the violent crime rate of Lexington, and all with less than the 700 officers he wants to hire. But back to where we are today. Together, we have accomplished a lot, and our city is on the move. We've avoided the bankruptcy path. We are making investments in our city to make Lexington even better. I routinely say, even on a bad day, being mayor is a great job. We're getting things done.
Mayor. Thank you. And now Candidate Anthony Beatty's 2-minute closing statement.
Right. I'm going to stay within my time limit, but I have to say this to what Jim just said. Certainly, we made an effort to increase the number of police officers based on where we feel the city of Lexington should be and where it must be. And as a matter of fact, we've reduced the number of officers and we've reauthorized to bring the numbers back where they should be based on formulas that were used that were effective and appropriate. In closing, my proactive public safety message, my enhanced public services, and certainly superior fiscal responsibility was in the conversations we had with citizens throughout and around Lexington. And during those conversations, we learned that those were the priority for them. You've heard my answers on several questions this evening. But on November the 4th, I asked that you answer 3 very, very important questions. Number 1 is, have Jim Gray made mistakes and bad decisions in public safety? Number 2, has Jim Gray made mistakes and bad decisions on the Rupp Arena project? Number 3, have these mistakes and bad decisions adversely impacted the city of Lexington and its relationships? Now, if your answers are yes, then join Jim Gray in supporting and voting for me, Anthony Beatty, for new leadership in Lexington. And I say that because 4 years ago, Jim Gray said in his own words, and I quote, "We all make mistakes, but when a mayor makes and keeps making mistakes, bad decisions, it's time for new leadership." I am Anthony Beatty. Vote for new leadership and a proven leader for all of Lexington. I pride myself on being a builder of communities and neighborhoods. Public safety, public services, and an enhanced fiscal stewardship all exist to improve our communities. And communities and neighborhoods exist to enrich our lives. I am a builder of communities, of neighborhoods, and relationships. I ask for your vote on November the 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, and thank you very much for the way you conducted yourselves here tonight for this Lexington mayoral debate. A reminder to you that the election is coming up on Tuesday, November 4th. There will be a lot to cover between now and then. We certainly appreciate you watching or listening to tonight's debate. And also, again, we want to thank the candidates and our partners at the Lexington Herald-Leader, the League of Women Voters, and News Radio 630 WLAP, which is simulcasting this debate tonight. And from all of us at WKYT, thank you very much for joining us. Good night. Have a good week.